Today I'm going to list out 7 different reasons that I've run across on a normal basis why you wouldn't want to use a water-fed pole. Reason number 1 would be cracked or broken or fragile windows. If there's already a crack in the glass, stay away. Sometimes all you can see is a small hairline fracture, and that's enough to be a red flag. Notify the customer right away that you're going to skip that window and point out the issue. Additionally, some older storm windows can be very fragile, and any amount of pressure pushed against it will cause it to break. You're going to have to carefully remove these by hand and be very delicate with cleaning them. Number 2 is be very cautious anytime you're cleaning wooden frames, whether it's the window frames themselves or the doors. The glossy finish itself, whether it's a varnish or other type of wood finish, can actually be damaged by the deionized water. You can get little white water spots or sometimes even completely damage the finish and make it look like a matte finish or cloudy look instead of the nice glossy sheen that it had before. So be very careful. On top of that, the wood can swell if it absorbs the water. Now, if it's sealed, that shouldn't be as much of an issue. But if it doesn't have a seal on it, it can expand and contract and warp if it gets soaked with water. So it's not necessarily that you can't ever use a water-fed pole in these situations, but if you do, be very mindful and very careful. And when in doubt, go ahead and use traditional tools. Reason number 3 is if it's older windows that have a gap, whether it's above the top edge of the glass or beneath, like under the crack of a doorway. If water can get through and channel, it can cause issue to the interior of the house and further damage that you don't want to have to deal with. Sometimes you don't notice this until you're already cleaning and you'll see water drops and spots starting to cascade on the other side of the window glass. When that happens, feel free to stop, go inside and point it out to the customer that they need it to get resealed or repaired somehow, and begin to use regular traditional tools. Other times it's just simply important to be mindful if there's water leaking and to go ahead and dry it out. Sometimes you're cleaning a front entrance and you don't realize that there's no seal on the bottom frame of the door, and the water can begin to puddle up on the floor, which could potentially cause issues, especially if they have hardwood floors. Reason number 4 is when the windows are very dirty. This can be hard water stains, calcium deposits, or even just an unusual buildup of grime on the glass. Typically, if the windows haven't been cleaned in 2 or more years, you're going to want to use traditional tools because the water-fed pole on its own is not going to be able to agitate the buildup enough to clean the glass. There are ways that you can address this without using traditional tools. Just remember, the water-fed pole alone isn't going to cut it. Reason number 4 would be hard water stains or paint overspray that happens from somebody else messing up on their job and not covering the windows properly. Again, you could use chemicals to clean this and then wash it with the water-fed pole, but usually it's more efficient just to go get the traditional tools and a ladder and take care of business. Reason number 5 would be grout, concrete, or mortar that has gotten onto the glass and cured. These debris can actually scratch the glass if you brush it with a pole. You have to be very careful in these situations. Go inside, notify the customer, and even have them sign some type of a scratch waiver. Oftentimes when this debris hits the glass during construction, it will actually cause a scratch while it is hitting the glass that can't be visible until you remove it. You don't want to be held liable for those scratches, and if you notify the customer in advance, they will understand what's happening more clearly, and therefore you will not be blamed by them. When you do use a traditional scraper blade to remove this debris, make sure that you're scratching downward so that any debris that is getting removed from the glass doesn't slip under the blade. And the 6th reason that you would consider not using a water-fed pole would be slippery areas, especially around entrances or walkways that are in high traffic zones. People die because they slip on wet concrete and hit their head. While we always carry liability insurance, you don't want to have to use it for this situation. Whether you have an algae buildup on a wooden deck or just a fancy tile that happens to be more slippery than usual, make sure that the customer understands that they need to stay out of the area while it's still wet. If it's somewhere like the front entryway, then you may just want to use the traditional tools. That way you don't get the ground wet and it doesn't get slippery, so anybody coming through is going to be safe. The seventh reason to hold off on using a water-fed pole would be oxidized frames. When the frames or the paint on the frames is oxidized, it can actually kind of bleed onto the glass, leaving a milky substance on it, which does not look clean. It is possible to still clean them with a water-fed pole, but it takes a lot longer because you have to wait for the frame to completely dry before you rinse any of the glass. Oftentimes, it's a lot easier just to go ahead and squeegee it off. Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll update the video and do something bigger and better in the future. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.